welcome to this special Zero episode of DC Legacy Filmcast. I am your co-host, Chris Ayers.
And I'm your co-host, Dennis Cooper.
So the purpose of this episode is just to introduce ourselves. We're going to be running down every DC movie starting in 1951 to present. That's the purpose of the podcast. Dennis and I, we previously co-hosted a podcast called The People v. Batman v. Superman, which ran for 26 episodes, plus a few special episodes where we analyzed our very complicated feelings toward Batman v. Superman.
Yeah, it was a very interesting analysis. I think it was a cathartic healing exercise for both of us. I think we both went in very much not liking this movie and came out still very much not liking this movie, but able to appreciate it on some level. Is that fair?
Yeah, I appreciate some of its parts. I think it doesn't add up to anything cohesive and entertaining and inspiring for me, but yeah, we definitely had a lot of fun talking about the DC lore and the history of DC Comics and all the references present in that movie, which were a lot. We decided we really liked talking about DC properties, and we decided to keep going in the form of this podcast. So we are both big fans of DC Comics. And we just wanted to give you quickly an idea of who we are, and then we're going to talk just quickly about what's coming up in the next few months in the podcast. So, Dennis, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Dennis Cooper. I've been a fan of the DC Universe since I was a wee little one, and I would wake up on Saturday mornings and watch the Super Friends. My parents wanted to stay in bed, and so they would turn the TV on, pour me a bowl of cereal, and I would sit there and watch the Super Friends. And it was great. I loved seeing all the superheroes together: Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Aquaman. It was fantastic. I got the toys when I was a kid, the Mego action figures, and then later the Superpowers action figures when I was older. Eventually, I started getting the comics. Was a little slow getting into the comics. I had a detour going into G.I. Joe, I think, as a lot of people did. But G.I. Joe got me in the comic books, and then when I went to the comic shop for the first time, when I found out that there was a place that just exclusively sold comics, the week that I was going there was the week that John Byrne's Man of Steel came out. So I got on board with the Superman revamp in the 80s as a kid as one of my earliest comics. I've been collecting DC Comics pretty much ever since then. I think even when in the dark times in the late teens, when I thought that buying comic books meant that I would never find a girlfriend, I still managed to keep up with Doom Patrol and Sandman. So I've been consistently buying DC Comics for most of my life, for the last 30 years or so. And I love the breadth and depth and oddness of the DC universe. I really love what Wizard Magazine would call the Morts of the Month, the really oddball, goofy supervillains that are hardly ever seen. Those are my favorites. When they show up, I just glow on the inside. I'm just so excited and so happy to see Zebra Man or Calculator or Rainbow Raider. It just brings such joy to my life. So yeah, I also really appreciate the DC universe for having a history and having legacy. For most of the time that I've been reading DC Comics, I started with the post-crisis DC and went through Zero Hour all the way up to the New 52. Was really what I consider my version of the DC universe. And then the New 52, I stuck with it, but it was not the same. It missed out on a lot of the things that I liked about the DC universe before that. I'm optimistic in the post-Rebirth DC universe that the Legacy is returning, and that the idea of these characters having a longer history and a deeper bench of obscure heroes and villains to inhabit the world is returning. So I look forward to that.
You also run a website related to comic books. You want to tell everybody about that?
Oh, yes. Thank you for reminding me. I am a librarian. I am studying to be a librarian, and I have this wonderful job as a student of processing a collection of over 10,000 mostly Bronze Age comic books for the University of Iowa Special Collections. And you can see a lot of the things that I am processing. I am sharing them on my Tumblr account, which is comicbooklibrariansupreme.tumblr.com, and you can check that out there.
Yeah, it's been a really great resource and archive, I think, for just bringing up things from the past that I had forgotten about. I always enjoy perusing your site. And you're very timely too, things that are sort of happening, like characters' birthdays or, things that are relevant to, what's coming out in the other media. It's really fun.
I have a lot of fun with it. Thank you.
So yeah, my name is Chris Ayers, co-host, and I'm a graphics guy. I'm a visual guy. I'm a graphic designer, illustrator, animator. So it really surprises me now that I'm also producing audio this frequently. This is the second podcast I've been a host on now, and I've also produced another podcast locally in Phoenix, Arizona, where I live. It's about creative and interesting people in Phoenix. If you happen to be in the Phoenix area, that one's called On the Grid. I don't host that one. I just produce and edit that one. I think one of the things that led me to being a visual guy was comic books at a very early age. When I first got my hands on comic books, I was copying out, from those books and drawing. And I think I owe my career to comics, DC and otherwise. But my first DC comic was the death of Jason Todd, Robin, which I think was 1988. If I had to guess, that I would have been about 10 years old. My previous experience with the DC properties, like you said, had been Super Friends and the Adam West Batman 1966 TV show, which is on in reruns perpetually. Once I figured out that there was this large universe of all these characters, it was fantastic. And the crossovers, really got me into it. And just I love the idea of characters interacting with each other. You take two opposite characters and how are they going to react? Regardless of what the story is, it's about those little character moments
Right.
that I appreciate quite a bit. I also love films, and I always get excited about a new DC film coming out. My favorite one is The Dark Knight. And I have a personal connection to that one because I've brought this up a couple times on our other show, but I was an extra in that for exactly 3.5 seconds. I'm an evacuee from Gotham City. And when The Dark Knight was filming in Chicago, where I lived, you also lived there at the time,
Right.
but we don't anymore. I was all over trying to find the film locations for that because I was obsessed with the fact that Batman and the Joker were like in my city at that time. This is back in like 2007, I believe, when it filmed. And that was amazing to me that the whole film crew was just there in the city. It was the largest film production Chicago had ever seen. So I'm immortalized on screen for about 3 seconds. I really do love those Nolan films, even though they some of them have problems, but I still love them. And yeah, like I said, I still get excited when a new DC movie comes out. Although we didn't like Batman v Superman, that was a really important film. That's why we could spend over 30 hours talking about it. It's a very significant moment in pop culture for sure.
Right. Yeah. It's strange. As much as I dislike it, I feel some ownership of it now after
Right.
talking about it for 26
I
episodes.
think we're like reluctant experts on that movie now. That's something is with me now that it will be part of me forever.
Right.
But yeah, we still have the CW shows, the DC universe on there. I remember watching Lois and Clark when it was on. There's, like you said, there's this legacy of these characters on the screen, and a lot of time things are established first in, say, the radio dramas or on TV, and then added into the comics.
Right.
And that's what I find really fascinating about the history, and that's one of the things we're going to pay attention to throughout this podcast is how these movies influence the comics and vice versa. So we're in it for the long haul. There are a lot of DC comics, and we're starting with a film called Superman and the Mole Men in 1951, which was basically the pilot for the Adventures of Superman TV show. So we're going to talk about that in the first episode. We're also going to talk about the film Hollywoodland from 2006, which tells the story of George Reeves, the tragedy that befell him, basically the sort of the dark side of the George Reeves Superman. And then the film after that, we're going to jump ahead quite a bit, about 15 years, to Batman in 1966, which sprang out of the TV show.
Really excited about that one.
Yeah, me too. After that, the next big DC movie is Superman 1978, the Richard Donner, Christopher Reeve version. There are a lot more movies closer together after that. There's not such big gaps. I'm personally looking forward to seeing Supergirl again because I saw that on the big screen when it came out, and I have not seen it since. And the fact that we're covering every movie means we're going to have to cover some very bad movies, objectively bad movies. Steel, Shaquille O'Neal.
Catwoman with Halle Berry. Yeah.
We've got a lot to cover, and we're going to do these about every 3 to 4 weeks, much less frequent than the Batman v Superman podcast, which came out every week. We're also going to have guests, hopefully people who were involved in the making of these films or experts on the subject. These are going to be a little more produced than our typical podcast. Very much looking forward to this project.
Me too. This is going to be a lot of fun. Thank you for having me back to be the Robin to your Batman, Chris.
I get to be Batman?
You get to be Batman. You were in the movie.
That's right. Yeah, I should be Batman.
Right.
Yeah, so that's about it for this introductory episode. We're going to keep it short. If you will subscribe to this podcast feed, you won't miss an episode. We're also already on social media. If you want to look us up, DC Legacy Filmcast on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We will also soon have a YouTube channel. And this is going to be your source for all things DC movies. And we're also going to keep up with the films coming out. So this is your place to learn about the new Wonder Woman film or the new Zack Snyder Justice League movie coming at the end of the year. So, Dennis, we have a lot to look forward to, and we will see you later.
Yes. Can't wait. See you guys there.